before we start, if I look weird or sound weird, it's because I'm sick. I'm sorry, I wasn't going to record today, but I feel like I kind of have to after this discovery. Right now, the meta is being dominated by decks such as Gardevoir, Gardevoir Jellicent, Ceruledge is doing really good, Grimmsnarl Frostlass is doing really well, and Goldengo is also a deck that's up there. There's no perfect deck right now, you know, everything beats something, which is quite nice, you know, it's a fairly healthy format. However, we have seen Gardevoir Jellicent on the rise, and the Jellicent kind of fixes Gardevoir's bad matchups. It really does help against Goldengo, and we've also seen it beating Grimmsnarl Frostlass quite often. So right now we're definitely seeing Gardevoir Jellicent on the rise, which is not good for Dragapult. Obviously, Dragapult kind of struggles against Gardevoir decks, like quite badly actually. If we take a look at Dragapult right now, we see these win rates sitting at around 35% and 37%, which isn't great at all. And as someone who loves Dragapult, you know I love Dragapult, I've been thinking, how can we fix this? And it's led me down a path of Zoroark, and it's not the Zoroark you think. This is the current list I am playing right now, and you can see we are playing Zoroark, but not N-Zoroark. This deck doesn't struggle from the lack of a draw engine, so we are playing the one prize Zoroark with the foul play attack, and this attack is absolutely incredible. Not only is that attack great, Mind Jack, don't get me wrong, is a great attack, doing 30 damage for each of our opponent's bench Pokemon. It's a great attack, right? Very, very nice and strong attack. There's a full art version of this card. I was unaware of this. Okay, wait, we're going on a little journey together, quick. Journey together? Is that a reference? That's pretty sick. All right, I'm gonna have to cut myself some of these. Anyway, back to regular stuff. So, foul play, choose one of your opponent's active attacks and use it as his attack for 3 colors energy. That sucks, right? It really sucks. Or does it? Well, Ignition Energy provides 3 colorless energy when attached to an evolution Pokemon. Obviously, you have to discard it at the end of your turn, but you're assuming the Pokemon's going to die at the end of during your opponent's turn, so it doesn't really matter. And something that is absolutely busted is that what we can do, we can just go Boss's Orders up our opponent's Gardevoir and then slap an Ignition Energy onto our Zoroark and then foul play, take the knockout over there, right? Super easy. So we're dealing 380 damage to Gardevoir. We're just one-shotting it completely. And that's not the only matchup this card really helps against. If we go back to the decks, let's take a look at Ceruledge, right? It has an okay time into Dragapult, right? It's favored into Dragapult. Obviously, it's fairly 50-50, but it's leaning towards Ceruledge. Well, if we take a look at Ceruledge itself, let's take a look at one of the deck lists quick and just click on Ceruledge. It has a pretty good second attack, 280 damage. However, this Pokemon never uses attack because of the awkward energy cost, right? 280 damage, it isn't great for Ceruledge when it can be dealing upwards of 300 damage with Abyssal Flames for a single energy. But for us, the fact that it has the second attack is really, really good. You might be thinking, well, why? Well, if we take a look at the Zoroark, it can copy any of our opponent's attacks, right? So we can copy Ceruledge's secondary attack and just one-shot it straight away. And this goes for any Pokemon that has a strong attack like this. Let's think Flareon EX has the exact same attack, dealing 280 damage. We can just one-shot Flareon for a single energy. That is what makes it so strong. Using Zoroark, we can one-shot so many Pokemon such as Gardevoir. We can one-shot Ceruledge. We can one-shot Flareon. All of these Pokemon can be one-shot for a single energy. And that is incredible. Mind Jack in itself is a decent attack because if we think about it, what is Gardevoir playing right now? Well, Gardevoir's playing a lot of Jellicent, and obviously Jellicent's attack isn't great for us to copy. It only does 80 damage. We need an extra energy attached if we want to do that full 160 damage, which then it's fine. But the thing is, Gardevoir usually has a full bench, right? And if they have a full bench of 5 Pokemon, well, that means we are dealing 300 damage for a single energy, right? So now they either have to bench 1 less Pokemon and get less use out of that, and then we have to attach an extra energy, unfortunately, into Zoroark, or usually they'll have a full bench, and then we can knock out a Jellicent for a single energy. And that is obviously really, really strong. This is also something that can be used to punish decks such as Terror Box or decks such as Raging Bolt. If they have 8 Pokemon on the bench, that means we're doing 240 damage, which is pretty good because we one-shot every single one of the Pokemon in the deck if they don't have a Bravery Charm attached, which is just really nice. It's very convenient for us, right? Another really nice part about this is that we can copy other Dragapults Phantom Dives, right? We can do our own Phantom Dive for a single energy without putting ourselves into a 2-price board state. We can just straight up foul play, Phantom Dive 200, spread 60, take a knockout over there, and they're going to Phantom Dive us back, probably take a knockout on the Zoroark, which is perfectly fine because, well, we're probably going to be having double Monkey Dory set up on bench, right? Double Monkey Dory is another very important part of this deck, as this is another really good card that can help us beat the Grimmsnarl matchup. Obviously, Grimmsnarl right now is a pretty damn good deck in the meta, so upping our counts of Monkey Dories is really important, as now we can also copy Grimmsnarl's attack for 108 damage, keeping ourselves at a 1-price board state, and then swinging or slinging damage that side, right? Another nice thing about this is that this is a 1-price attacker, which is just another really nice thing. We can keep ourselves in that 4-Tricloak board state while attacking with these Zoroarks. Something that I'm not sold on completely yet is this secondary Zoroark. I haven't tested with it in yet. It does 60 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon EX and Vs in play. So essentially this is just a Terror Box attacker. It's pretty good against Ho-Oh Box and these other kind of janky Raging Bolt decks. You know, it's also a pretty solid attacker against Goldengo. If Goldengo tries to flood their board with Dengos, we can punish them for that. So right now, I just think this deck is absolutely bonkers, right? I've only played about 5 games with it, but I'm yet to lose, right? 3 of those games are against Gardevoir, and, well, let's just say Zoroark carries that matchup. And another thing against Goldengo is that we can set up our own Fighting Ogerpon and then set up our double Monkey Dory, and from there it's very easy to just kind of win the game off of that. You'll see the energy counts are a little bit weird. We're playing 1 Prism energy and 2 Luminous instead of 3 Luminous energy, but that's because I actually want the Prism energy so that we can attack with Fighting Ogerpon a little bit more often, because otherwise we would have to slap down 1 Luminous and both of our other Psychic energy onto our Ogerpon, whereas now we can kind of slap down the Prism energy and then have a Luminous or whatever on there. It doesn't really matter that much. So very, very nice. Another thing is that we aren't really attacking with Dragapult, right? Dragapult, don't get me wrong, amazing attacker. However, we are probably only going to need to attack with Dragapult once throughout our games. That's why the Neo Upper Energy is the A-spec of choice, because obviously with the Ignition Energy discarding itself after every turn, we can't really prepare future attackers. We can only do that in the beginning of the game by maybe attaching an energy to a Dreepy. However, sometimes we'll need that energy to retreat into a Badoo, and also the only things we're really prepping energy onto is Monkey Dories, so it can be a little bit difficult to try and preload energy onto a Dragapult. That's why we kind of need the Neo Upper Energy on the Dragapult, right? We could be playing something like a Terra Crystal. However, obviously we're playing Jamming Tower as our one-of stadium. It's just the best stadium right now. I don't see a better stadium for us to play. Hilda is an amazing card in this deck. It allows us to search out these Ignition energies, also these other more awkward counts of energies. We're only playing 1 recovery item, but that's because we're playing a pretty heavy line of Zoruas. We're playing 3 Zoruas into a 2-1 split of Zoroarks, and then our Dragapult is honestly, we only need 1 Dragapult throughout the game. We're just playing 2 because playing 1, I can't justify playing 1. If we prize it or if we discarded it and use the rod earlier on, it just feels a little bit awkward. So 2 Dragapult is perfectly fine, because sometimes, look, you do want to just attack with Dragapult, right? There's going to be matchups like, let's say, for example, Grimmsnarl, where Dragapult is probably just going to be your main attacker. You're going to set up a Dragapult, and you're going to set up double Monkey Dory, and from there, you're probably just going to be doing that. Something that you could consider is a 4th Boss's Orders. 4 Boss's Orders really plays into this deck very well, as you are constantly wanting to gust stuff up that has strong attacks, and that you can use the foul play for. For example, if your opponent plays a Latias, right? Eon Blade does 200 damage, and you might be thinking, oh, but we don't one-shot Latias because it's 210 HP. It's weak to dark. Any deck that plays a Latias means we can instantly punish that Latias for being benched with a single attachment and a Boss's Orders for a free 2 price cards, and we can stay at a 1-price board state. We can keep Ultra Cloaks in play and just evolve into a Zoroark, right? Very, very strong. Another thing that we can do that came up in one of my games is that my opponent promoted Pheasantipity. I just attached the Ignition Energy and just copied Cruel Arrow, right? And just killed the routes on the bench. And that's pretty good. It's pretty damn good. Obviously, the deck isn't perfect, but right now I think into a meta that looks like this, it's really solid. It is really, really solid. Alakazam, Zoroark answers that, Dragapult already has a good answer into that, and Zoroark fighting Ogerpon answers that, Charizard Pidgeot, and Zoroark answers that, not in Zoroark, sorry, fighting Ogerpon answers that, Godwall Jellicent, Zoroark answers that, Godfall, Zoroark answers that, Grimmsnarl Frostlass, Monkey Dory fighting Ogerpon answers that, Ceruledge, Zoroark answers that, Dragapult Dusknoir, a bit of a more difficult matchup, but I think being able to Phantom Dive for 1 energy, Zoroark answers that, Goldengo, fighting Ogerpon answers that. And another really cool thing is that as we go into these future sets, we're going to have Mega Pokemon that have really strong attacks, right? If we take a look at Lucario, well, Lucario has a pretty good attack, right? Don't get me wrong, Lucario is no pushover of a card. It has a very strong attack, being 270 damage for 2 energy, right? We can copy that for 1 energy. We can deal 270 damage into this Lucario from a 1-prizer. And then from there, since we dealt 270 damage, we can close out the attack. We only have to do another 70 damage to it, right? So what we can do then is we can boss this to the bench. We can Hawlucha, ping 10 damage to that, and then Phantom Dive, doing the last 6 damage and taking 3 prize cards there while swinging for 200 into the active. So we are able to copy so many really strong attacks, and it's only going to get better as stronger Pokemons are released in the future. For example, the electric, I don't know what that lightning guy is. It does 330 damage, right? As a mega, and that's not bad. However, we can copy that for 1 energy. So, final thoughts on the list. I could honestly see myself going up to a 4th Ignition energy. Obviously, only having 3 means we can only attack with Zoroark 3 times, unless we want to manually power it up with actual energies, and that's probably never going to happen. But yeah, so right now this deck looks incredible, feels incredible. However, it can definitely be improved, and if you guys have any recommendations, comment them below, right? Most of you that watch this channel aren't subscribed. If you guys want more content and more lists, subscribe, smash subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out a lot. So yeah, thanks for watching. Peace.